Hello, this is going to be my self-assessment for Aims of Diversity through NBU Summer 2021. So just a quick overview, I'm going to be talking about kind of what I've learned, what I'm taking away from the Aims of Diversity course, and addressing some of the specific learning targets as well as my own goal for the year. So I'm going to jump right in. And start talking about some of those learning targets of the class and how I felt I've met those. So, our first learning target of this course was to gain knowledge of theories and research related to historical, political, ethical, and legal foundations of social diversity in the U.S. and beyond. So I really came from in this course, I feel like a lot of that knowledge I've gained about theories and research. I gained a lot from the book Far from the Tree by Andrew Solomon. He kind of hit a lot of different topics. I learned a lot about deaf culture in deaf schools and how they are looked at, and they have in a really kind of complicated situation where they are both disabled and have an identity. Same with people with dwarfism, and he did, in his book he did a really good job talking about like the political, the ethical, as well as some of the legal issues they're facing. I also learned a lot in our weekly class meetings, hearing what other people were reading and sharing their things. I learned a lot about other theories and other research, and particularly one peer's project of looking at special ed laws at a national level and the total changes between them. I feel like just listening to her short shares about what she was doing, I feel like I've learned a lot about special ed and how that affects our diversity and in the U.S. But by far, the most learning came from Andrew Solomon's Far from Tree and his work on looking at social diversity through these 7 different lenses in the novel. Our second learning target was to acquire strategies for using appropriate methods of inquiry and generate original findings regarding endeavors to promote awareness and appreciation for the function of diversity. So first, this learning really came from in class. Dr. McGuff really modeled this in whenever we shared what we were working on. He was like, so why did you choose that? What critique did you look at? And he's really helped me develop that question to come to my forefront of my brain when I'm looking at any article of, okay, so why are they writing this? What's the background? So that's really helping that appropriate method of inquiry, and which leads to your findings. And then in terms of promoting awareness and appreciation for the function of diversity, again, I'm going to come back to the same Andrew Solomon book. It was kind of my main text for this course, but I felt it was so important because he talks about all of these different groups who all have such wide ranges of how society perceives them, but he found a connection between them, and I feel like that was my main takeaway, was that we want to maintain people's differences, but also understand that in those differences, we come down to the same basic similarities of people want to be accepted for who they are. And I think that was the key thing of no matter how diverse, how different people are, they want to be accepted for themselves, and if we can accept people for themselves, then they can do a broader good for humanity as a whole. Our third learning objective was to develop an informed perspective about the practice of diversity in a pluralistic and democratic society, and the capacity to convey that perspective to others in a scholarly manner. So this was definitely addressed also in the book, but I took the book and I read also some other articles, and really together looking at not just diversity, but also I took some time to really think about in our education system, the place of diversity. As an educator, that was really important to me because I wanted to know how to bring this. You can know all about diversity, but until you take and try to make some informed changes in your own life, that doesn't really matter. Which leads us also into my fourth learning objective, which was constructive vision of themselves as advocates for diversity with a plan for professional action. So to me, these two are very tied together, because if you're going to convey your perspective to others in a scholarly manner, you're going to really quickly move into that advocate role. But so I took my learning from the book, from some of the other articles I read. I read an article, even just looking at the difference in the activities that diverse groups of people do. And it made me really think about my own practice in my classroom and like, oh, well, this activity seems to me to be like, oh, it's kind of a risk-taking, but I found out it's a really white activity. So I'm asking more of my students of color to do that activity because they don't know anybody who does it. Or they may not. It's less likely that it's something that they do in their everyday life. So it's just something that I really have taken and I kind of have thought a lot about. Not just can everybody be included, which I feel like is kind of that base level of inclusion, but thinking about the risk level that you're asking. And not just physical risk, but like, hey, do they know someone else do they have a model that looks like them, that acts like them, a model from their own community that does this? And if they don't have a model, as a teacher, can I provide them with a model? And not just me as a model, but someone who they are going to identify with. So that not only in terms of diversity that they're seeing themselves, but also seeing themselves in new ways and growing. Particularly, I'm a science teacher, so I feel it's really important that I'm bringing in women scientists, so my girls are seeing that, oh, I could be a scientist. People of color, so that it's kind of breaking down that idea of it's a white male position. But at the same time, I want them to see, no, it's not a woman in a man's world, that female scientist can still be feminine, can still be herself. So it's trying to respect and honor all the diversity, but also bring us together. And just being aware, I think, is the most important thing that I learned from this. Is so many times we're not aware of our own privilege, and we're not aware of how lucky we are. And by being more aware and taking more time to just kind of be reflective, and to really think about what is that diverse person's life, we can do little things to make that person who might be a different race, a different religion, a different nationality, little things to make them feel at home within our classrooms and within our society as a whole, that we're not going out of our way. But by doing that, you're going to help kind of bring everybody together and show that you care. And I think that's really important and kind of underrated, but it's really important to just show that we care. So that was kind of my learning. And then my personal goal I wrote at the beginning of the semester, was to learn about how diversity impacts education and what I can do to embrace diversity. And I feel like I learned a lot about what I can do to embrace diversity. Just by learning more about diversity, it was really easy to see how can I embrace it. I don't feel like I got to go as far as I would have liked into how diversity impacts education. I learned specific groups. I learned pretty in-depth about how deaf education and students who are deaf, how their education the different routes they take, whether they mainstream or go to an all-deaf school or get cochlear implants, how that can impact. But I wish I had gotten to dive a little bit deeper with some other key groups. But I do feel like by learning how to embrace diversity more, which is more just learning to be able to sit in that discomfort that someone's different than you, that it's okay. That's kind of one of my takeaways from this course and another course that I took this summer is just, we need to be okay with sitting with discomfort. And that's kind of an oxymoron, to be comfortable in discomfort, but it's something I think we all need to work on and accept that we're not always going to be in control. And that's okay. And we need to let others take that control at times and teach us, even when we're the teacher or the person in power in the room, because we don't know it all. And we shouldn't know it all. We know our perspective. So letting people from diverse backgrounds come and talk and take that ownership is really important. But alright, so those are kind of my big takeaways. I felt like the bulk of my learning came from Andrew Solomon's book. And then I had found kind of other articles that supported that idea, or a couple that challenged and made me really think and question and kind of critique. There were some things in this novel that I was like, that is a little out there. It seems a little too far. But I think that's with anything. You got to look at it and really think deeply and question. But thank you for watching, and I hope that this wasn't absolutely terrible to watch. But thank you. I think overall, a great summer semester, and I learned a lot. So thank you for watching.